This is Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given is not intended to replace that of your business advisor. Now, let's get down to talking about your business, your success. This is Business Talk.
Well, good afternoon. It is Peg today without Pete because in studio today we are fortunate enough to have the famous, I guess I can call you famous Tim because you're all over the world now.
Wow. That's a good day already. I've been called famous.
The famous Tim Kight. Tim is the owner and founder of Focus 3. And what I want to do, Tim, is just hop right into it and tell our listeners what is Focus 3, first of all.
We're a business performance consulting firm, and the three, obviously there's three things that we focus on, and that is building better leaders, building better culture, and building better behavior. Leadership, culture, behavior. That's our focus. That's what we help our clients focus on.
Oh, Tim, I love hearing that because that is what Pete and I, we sing that song all the time. And what's neat, what I want our listeners to know a little bit is how you started with Focus 3. And I know a little bit about this, but I want you to explain it. And then how you got into different areas of your business. Explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I started this company in San Diego many, many years ago, and to try to make it as fast as possible, because it is interesting, and I just came from UCLA. I was working with UCLA women's basketball this past weekend.
Oh, wonderful.
Yep. That's my alma mater.
Oh, it is? Okay.
It is.
Well, very good.
I went to high school here in Central Ohio and went to Ohio State my freshman year on a track and field scholarship. Then I transferred to UCLA.
For the track and field or
yes.
for the college? Oh, wow.
For track and field. And this was back in the late 60s, early 70s. And the locker room for track was in Poly Pavilion, which is where the basketball team had its locker room and practiced and played. And the coach was John Wooden.
Oh, my. Okay.
Yes. And so I was there for 3 years, and those were John Wooden's final 3 years, and I watched him win his 9th and 10th national championships.
Oh, neat.
The genesis of this business began when I watched Coach Wooden. I got to know him, and I'm in the building, and I wasn't a basketball guy, but there were only two sports in the building, so we interfaced a lot.
Correct.
We also did some stuff away from sports together, but I watched, he was demonstrably different than any leader or coach I'd ever seen in my life. And I'm a young 19-year-old kid from Central Ohio going to California to pursue, my track and field dream. And he just absolutely, he was unique and different. And so I became very curious about how he did that. And how do you win 10 national championships?
That is something. Right, exactly.
I mean, 1 is amazing, 2 is incredible, 3 is a wow, 10, there's no words for it.
Right.
In fact, think about this. His nickname was the Wizard of Westwood.
Okay.
Because it looked like magic.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't. It was world-class mechanics of leadership and culture building at a level that still hasn't been seen, at least in men's basketball.
Well, I think it's interesting how you were 19 and saw something. So you were wise enough to know, okay, this is something.
Well, I don't know how wise I was at 19. That's a bit of a reach, I think. But I was curious.
Okay, so...
And in fact, here's an interesting thing. I had curiosity. I've gained wisdom.
I love it. I love it.
And then my curiosity turned into a passion, and I built a business around it. And then there's a journey, obviously, and I coached. I finished at UCLA, competed internationally for a bit. I then coached high school football and track in Los Angeles, and so I was trying this thing myself. And I went.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did my own coaching.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yep, then
good.
I went to grad school at Princeton, and was a graduate assistant coach there.
Now, what was your major when you went
theology?
To Princeton? Okay.
Yeah, so I was a student of the Bible.
Okay.
And then went off to Europe, more theological studies, back to the United States. And what ended up happening is along the way, I kept pursuing that curiosity thing about where does elite performance come from? That was the driving question. Where does elite performance come from in a person, on a team, in an organization? Where does it come from? Went back to Southern California, started Focus 3, it's called something different back then, Management Resource Group, MRG we called it.
MRG.
But it quickly evolved to, there are 3 things that you have to get right in your organization or team. And that is, you've got to get leadership, culture, and behavior. You got to be skillful in all 3 of those and align them in order to execute your strategy, compete in the marketplace. And it doesn't matter if it's a for-profit organization or a not-for-profit organization.
Right.
And, we were talking earlier, the 3 markets we currently...
Yes. Describe the 3 markets that
we're in business, athletics, and education.
Now, where did you start when
business,
you started? And for our listeners who may not know this, because we will, and we're not going to hop into this now, but you had a big impact on our local team, Ohio State football program here. And I say it was in 2014, 2013, 14.
I started with Ohio State in 2013.
Yeah. And we'll get into that in a moment. But where did you start? You say now you're in business education and athletics. Where did you start? Was it in business?
Sure, as business.
It started in business.
Well, it's interesting because we've done business long time. And whenever we'd have an opportunity to be called into an athletic program or a school years ago, it never took. It was never, there was a resistance in athletics to anything from quote unquote business. There is strong resistance in schools for anything from quote unquote business. And so I'd have an interface or a touch point with some athletic team or some school, and nothing ever really happened. However, every single time we would go do a keynote or a workshop in a business setting, particularly on the behavior skill stuff.
Correct.
All of the adults in the keynote would come up afterwards and say, when are you going to get this into schools?
Isn't that interesting? And let's tell our listeners, we're fortunate to have Tim Kight here today. He is the founder and owner of Focus 3, and we're talking a little bit about how you work with all different segments to create major change. And it was funny because as Tim, what you don't know is right when you sat down, I go, okay, when are you going to get into our school? It is. I did the same thing to you.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. Please get into our schools as well.
And I think, Peg, the trigger point or the gravitational pull is at the heart of what we do is behavior skill. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to minimize leadership and culture because those are obviously critical pieces. But behavior is the one thing that affects everything.
Correct.
And we say all the time, and we call it the performance pathway, that leaders create culture. Culture drives behavior, and behavior produces results.
I love it.
And
Absolutely.
that's the first slide. That's the first, anything that we do, we start with the performance pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about that for a second. That says that results are not produced by strategy, by process, by budget, and by technology. Results are produced by how people in the organization or on the team choose to behave.
Have you ever had in the past somebody come up to you and say, as you're executing, this might have been a little bit ago, because I had this happen, and they come in, they go, oh, this is the soft stuff. I need real stuff.
I'm sure that.
Do you get that?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Let me hear, so I cut to the chase on this.
Uh-huh.
I asked them, all right, what if you have an A+ strategy and B- behavior?
Mm-hmm. What's your result then?
And they look at all this, and you can see this look of conviction go across. Mm-hmm. Here's the second one. If you have a perfectly designed process, you've gone through Lean Six Sigma, mm-hmm. and you have a technology-enabled process that's perfectly designed, enabled by the latest tech, and 3 people on that team that run that process are in bad moods.
Oh, that's so true.
What happens?
What happens?
And everybody goes, yeah, that's a problem. So the soft stuff is the hard stuff.
I'm so glad to hear somebody else back us, and we do get that. And I've seen lately, we've been doing this just about 13 years. Lately, we're getting a little more buy-in. I think it's not as difficult as it was in the past. Here's
another. All 3 of our pieces, leadership, culture, behavior, have an outcome or results component to it.
Correct.
Which also cuts through the chase.
Right.
So we say leaders are people who build trust and achieve results. We say culture is that environment of beliefs and behaviors that produces results. Then our behavior skill toolbox, and this is what really gets people's attention. This is the heartbeat, is this equation we use, E + R = O.
Right.
Stands for event plus response equals outcome.
And and that Urban Meyer, I'll never forget, I saw him on David Letterman, and he got on David Letterman and spoke to you and how much you had helped, and E + R being an impact on his organization.
Yeah.
So, and we'll hop into that because our listeners might not know that you were the coach for the football, and still are, correct? I mean, you are still coaching.
Yep. I was with them 2 days ago.
You're still coaching that program, obviously, to tremendous results. And thank you for all of us. I'm an Ohio State alumni.
Awesome.
So
Go
we
Bucks.
appreciate that. Yes, go Bucks. How do you take that equation, that E + R = O, and how do you really apply it to these kids? So you're in a football program. How do you get them to believe it?
It's a really great question, Peg. So here's And it's no different whether it's Ohio State football or UCLA women's basketball or a bank or a hospital or a manufacturing company or Hilliard City Schools. It's always the same. And that is this. E plus R equals O is how life works. Every day you experience events. You choose how to respond, and the outcome you get is determined by the response you choose. So we start with that.
Right.
Events happen. You don't control them. You choose your R, and then the quality of your R is what determines the O that you get. If you want a better O, choose a better R.
Choose a better R. And you give that to kids. And
starting at kindergarten.
Starting at kindergarten. That is wonderful. And so when we return, Tim, we want to hop into, I want to hear some of the programs you're getting to spread to our children. I also want to, when we get back, when we start in our next segment, how do people reach you? We'll go into that as well. And then we'll get into your program with Ohio State and the impact you're making.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more Business Talk.
Well, thank you for joining us. Today we have Tim Kight with us and sharing his wisdom. Tim is the owner and founder of Focus 3, and you concentrate on leadership, culture, and behavior. And right before the break, we were going to get into the programs and how do you train the trainers. So describe a little bit for our audience of how this works, because you're only one person and you're everywhere. So how do we touch all
we
this?
obviously have a team. You know, we've got 10 people on our team who do various things at Focus 3, and we have consultants and that go out and work with clients. But our approach is, we understand this. I say this all the time when we're working with a client. It's not my job to build your leaders. It's not my job to build your culture. It's not my job to improve your behavior. That's your job. My job, or the job of Focus 3, is to give you the tools to do that.
Right. So how do you do that?
We will start with the leadership team. We'll start with the leaders of the whole organization, or if it's a big company, we'll work with a business unit.
Right.
And we will train them initially. So we are with them on site or off site in some kind of a workshop setting, and we go deep with those leaders on their behavior, their leadership skills, and their ability to communicate and live and lead and build a culture. And then we will train a group of people inside the business to become the R-Factor facilitators. And they become certified R-Factor facilitators. And R-Factor is E plus R equals O.
Okay, got it.
And the reason why we do that is there's this metaphor we've been using for a long time called 20 square feet.
Okay.
And 20 square feet is just the metaphor. Every single person in an organization has ownership of 20 square feet of the culture and strategy of the organization.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's a metaphor. It's just the word, what we jokingly say, because we're big on research. Uh-huh. And people ask, where'd you get 20? I said 10 was small, 30 sounded weird, so I landed on 20.
I like that.
Yeah,
okay.
But it's, in Europe, it's metric. It's not even square feet.
That's true.
It simply represents the area of your own behavior and your own attitude, your own decisions.
The impact you make on others.
No, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. At first, no. The decision is, who are you? What do you do? What do you believe in? What level of discipline do you bring to the way you go about making decisions and managing your emotions? Mm-hmm. So we say, inside your 20 square feet, you have control. Okay. Outside, you have influence and impact.
Okay, I like that. Okay.
And what happens is, and think about this, most people in America are really aware of frustrating things outside their 20 square feet.
Right.
They're aware of irritating things that other people do. They're aware of, he or she or they aren't living the culture or doing weird things, mm-hmm. which is usually true. Mm-hmm. But what do they actually control? They control inside their 20 square feet. So here's our core message to everyone. Before you criticize outside, take ownership inside.
I like that.
And you'd better be self-aware. And we talk about two kinds of behavior. There's a line in life. Mm-hmm. And above that line is discipline-driven behavior, and below that line is default.
Right.
And, of course, people perform at their best when they're discipline-driven. Problem is, most of us live on default. And you can be highly talented and on default. You can be talented and below the line. And talent is not the differentiator. Discipline is. It's really interesting. And discipline, by the way, I'm gonna give a shout out. We're not too far right here from Worthington High School.
Yes.
The word discipline does not mean punishment.
I like that. There you go.
Well, it was hijacked by the punishment people years ago. We've reclaimed it for its original meaning. Now, I mentioned Worthington because I took 4 years of Latin at Worthington High School from Mrs. Drum. And the word discipline means learning. It means student. She'd walk into Latin class every day and say, Salve discipuli. Greetings, students. So the word discipline literally means you making the decision to get better every day by consistently applying principles to your life. That's what the word means. You make the decision to get better every day by consistently applying principles to your life.
Right.
Discipline is not something someone does to you. It's something you choose to do for yourself. Or you don't. And if you don't choose discipline, you get default.
And I'm hearing you say it starts with a mindset change of
correct.
Looking in
ownership.
At you, yes, before we go out.
Yep.
A lot of people, I bet you see that in organizations, whether it's a team or a business, pointing the finger, saying, well, what about them? And what you're saying is, let's look at you first.
Correct. Own yourself first. Earn the right to be able to have that conversation with a colleague.
Wonderful.
Own your own thinking, own your own emotions, own the way you communicate, own the way you listen, the way you engage. We say in our R-Factor training, there's 3 ways you deliver an experience to other people: attitude, action, and words.
I love it.
People feel your attitude every day. Mm-hmm. People see your actions every day. People hear your words every day. And go back and look at the discipline over default. If your attitude, action, and words are on default, you're going to deliver at best a mediocre experience, if not kind of irritating.
Right.
If your attitude, action, and words are discipline-driven, you're going to make a positive difference. But, discipline-driven is hard. We do not live in a discipline-driven society today.
It's with purpose, I assume. You have to, and you said you give tools, which is great. Tools in order to grow, whether it's in a business, whether it's in a sports or education area as well. So if people want to, so again, we're talking with Tim Kight today. He is the owner and founder of Focus 3, who helps organizations all over the U.S. and the world.
We're global.
The world?
We're global.
Globally. If people want to look at more information or get on a newsletter, what's the best way for them to get more information from you?
So our website's very simple, focus3.com.
Oh, that is good.
It's the number 3. Yeah,
okay,
focus3.com. I'm on Twitter a lot. I send out a lot of stuff on social media. My Twitter is @TimothyKight, and the Kight is Kight, @TimothyKight. And our website's got a lot of cool stuff on it. We also podcast. My son, Brian, is our CEO.
Okay, gotcha.
Doing a fantastic job. And he and I podcast.
He's probably been brought up with this, right?
He has been.
I mean, really? Okay. Yeah. And he's in charge of all your podcasts. So can they get on?
I don't know if he's in charge of all our podcasts or not, but we do them together. And everything that we've been talking about is on our podcast.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Can you just get online and sign up for that?
Focus 3 podcast on all the usual suspects, right? That's
great.
iTunes and Stitcher and SoundCloud and Spotify, even on YouTube. Most of them are videotaped, so you can see them.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring up one video that I got to have the great opportunity to see that I just, as you know, Pete and I, as business coaches, talk to people, to companies, and you had summed up what we see so much. And I wanted to talk about the impact you say when you have these, and I don't know if you want to call them, they're not necessarily the mature generation, maybe the baby boomers or whatever, coming in, talking about these millennials rolling their eyes, right? I'd like you, because I saw it on a video, talk a little bit about that message that you have to that room. Who's saying that?
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just in New York with one of our global clients, and they're providing resources to really advanced kind of financial services type stuff. And they wanted to talk and wanted me to come in and address their clients on building culture and connecting with millennials.
Right.
And the 4 people I was talking to, 3 of them were millennials. One was a Gen X, and then there was me.
Oh, okay.
The old guy in the room. And what I said to them was, I think you have to be careful of going with the popular conversation about generational differences. I certainly recognize and understand there are generational differences for sure. But I said, understand something. Generational differences aren't new. Go read Plato. Go read Aristotle. Go read the Latin greats. Go read anything in history. And what you're going to find out is young people have a certain kind of way they look at the world. And it's no real different today than it was in the 4th century BC. Now, what's different today is social media and smartphones and iPads. And so there's the the ability to do stuff. And so this notion of the millennials have this list of deficiencies or a list of attributes that are unique. The big one you hear all the time is they're entitled.
Yes.
That's the one you hear all the time.
We hear that all the time.
And I will sometimes set up a group, and particularly people around my age, 50, 60, and they've been in business or the organization a long time, and I'll say, and I'll set them up.
Right.
And they fall for the bait almost every time. I said, man, doesn't the entitlement mentality of the millennials just irritate you? And they're going, yeah. And I start listing the sort of attributes of entitlement. And then I said, can you think of a generation that kind of reached a spot in their career where they feel entitled that they don't have to change?
I love this.
And then I start going down the attributes of the middle-aged, experienced professional about the entitlement mentality that they have. And all of a sudden the room starts, well, wait a second, you're talking about us. I said, yeah, I am. But Brian makes a great point, my son. Of course, young people have certain entitlement mentalities. Well, two things. One, who taught it to them? Right. Who entitled them? No millennial ever asked for a participation trophy.
That's true, right.
We gave it to them.
Mm-hmm. Very
Number
good.
two, they don't need our judgment. They need our leadership. Young people are young people. They do what young people do. What do they need? They don't need our judgment.
I love it.
And I say this, love them, listen to them, then push them. And I've learned this in life. You cannot push anybody any further than the level of trust you've built with them.
That's good.
I love.
Repeat that again because
Sure.
that's really good. I want you to listen. Say it one more time.
You can't push anybody any further than the level of trust you've built with them.
That's brilliant.
And our job as coaches, as leaders, is to push people really hard. Awesome. But you have to earn the right to do that. I love millennials. Millennials love me. You know why? Because I listen to them.
You listen, you love, and you push.
And then I push. I look for those signs that I've earned the right to do that.
Well, and you work with a lot of millennials.
Tons.
That's one of your biggest targets with all of the athletic programs and education programs you're working in.
I'm with high school or college kids all the time.
All the time. And you're connecting. And I really like that message. And I wanted our listeners to hear that because we hear that a lot, the blaming all these millennials. And it's not something we want to hear.
I will. Here, I'll go one further, Peg.
Yes.
We have something called, that we talk about, no BCD. Mm-hmm. And BCD stands for blame, complain, defend.
I love the blame, complain, defend.
It's the ultimate default activity is blame, complain, defend. When things don't go the way you want, blame other people, complain about things, and defend your own behavior.
It's a place you don't want to be, is what you're saying.
You don't. Absolutely.
Okay.
We have a no BCD policy. And the opposite of BCD isn't silence. The opposite of BCD is resolution or resilience, meaning solve the problem or have the resilience to navigate through it with a good attitude. Mm-hmm. So we don't tell people not to talk about problems. We simply say don't complain about them. But here's what happens. People BCD about BCD.
I hear it every day. Every day.
And I say, folks, put the problem on. Bring me your problems. Let's work on them together. Let's go solve them.
I like that. Resilience, solving, staying away from.
Resolution or resilience.
There you go. Resolution.
No BCD.
I like that. So when we return, we're going to talk a little bit about how did you get hooked up into the sports program from business program and that transition and what it looked like.
Awesome.
Could your business use some help? Call 614-306-7922 to schedule your coaching session. 614-306-7922. Now, here's more business talk.
Well, again, it's Peg. Pete is not with us, but we have Tim Kight in studio. Tim is the owner and founder of Focus 3, and you are making an impact on so many different levels and so many different areas globally. One thing that really drove probably your I guess, awareness of what you do was your connection with the Ohio State football program, correct? Mm-hmm. And that was in 2013.
I met Urban in 2013. Yeah.
In 2013, and thank you thank goodness, because that helped so many people. It really got the word out. Now, how did you end up meeting him?
Fundraiser at his house.
Oh, okay. Just in Columbus.
I've been invited when he first got here at 2012, but I was in Europe doing R Factor training over there and was unable to to go to that fundraiser. The next year, 2013, my wife and I went to the fundraiser, met Urban at that event, and he and I started talking about these kinds of things.
Wonderful.
And it was, frankly, we started a conversation about leadership, culture, behavior, elite performance that has never stopped.
From that moment on.
Correct.
And he knew something good. He knew. He was wise enough to say, okay, this is something I need to get my hands on.
Well, I'll say this. One of the immediate things about Urban that got my attention was how humble he is and desirous to learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right now as we're talking, there are, you know, the universities are making this decision about retaining him, and there's a lot of false information out there. And I know Urban well, and I know what kind of a man he is because I work side by side with him on building culture and developing staff and young men, and he's a great man.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things about him that really got my attention was how desirous he was of being better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he openly said to me when we first started working together, I have gaps. I want to get better. Help me.
See, that's where it starts. It starts with the willingness and the openness to say, I want to learn and I want to grow. And that is wonderful. And you think somebody so accomplished would never, you would think, well, they must know everything. But no, it was absolutely the opposite. I need to be a sponge and do more.
My tweet yesterday was, you can't learn what you think you already know.
That's a good one.
And that's just a mindset that I have in my life. He has in his life. And I think everyone that we work with tends to have that mindset to more or less degree. But he was just really passionate about just wanting to get better as a leader and a coach, wanting his coaching staff to get better, and certainly the players to get better, and not just as football players. I mean, one of the things that we do at Ohio State, and we work with multiple sports there, by the way.
I've heard that because I have some kids. I have some of my clients whose kids are in athletic programs, and they've said they've had impact, which is wonderful.
Yeah, we work with 10 sports a year at Ohio State, and Urban is deeply committed to developing these young men into young men, leaders who become fathers, husbands, citizens. It's a beyond football thing, and there's a lot of stuff that he has installed and instituted at Ohio State that it's life shaping for these young men, and he has this deep belief that when you graduate from Ohio State and you're on a football team, you should be prepared to get a great job and have a great life. And he goes to great lengths to make sure that happens.
Oh, I have no doubt. With the success. That is wonderful. And so if people want to follow you on your Twitter, which you're very active, again, can you tell us how they can do that?
At Timothy Kight. And that's Kight, at Timothy Kight.
Right. And we are with Tim Kight here today talking about your impact on all of these programs. So then when you met Urban Meyer in 2013 and you started working with the football program and got to take this knowledge, because you were originally in business, right? So now you've grown not only in business, now you're doing these sports programs and you're able to impact that. Then did it go into the education?
It did. As a result of our work with Ohio State in the national championship season in 2014, there was notoriety. I mean, ESPN and Sports Illustrated.
Well, and it came with so many stories of all the adversity that team went through in that year.
Yep. I mean, that was a storybook year. I mean, that was in the book Above the Line, which is Urban's book about that season and about our work at Ohio State and how E+R=O and the culture work and the leadership work.
And the blame and the
no
complaint.
BCD.
No BCDs in there.
Don't blame.
It's a great book.
Yeah, don't blame, complain, defend.
Great book.
So, as a result of that, and I shout out to John Marshausen, the superintendent at Hilliard City Schools.
Okay.
John heard about it, read about it, and then he called me up and said, and I didn't know him, and he said, I want you to come and speak to our administrative leadership retreat, to all of our administrators.
Wise enough to know, okay, there's something here.
We need something. John is passionate about, in fact, I had the same conversation with John that I had with Urban. And I noticed, I said, these guys are cut from the same DNA. They're passionate about leadership, culture, and behavior for everyone under their care. Mm-hmm. And so I spoke at John's leadership retreat. All the administrators, they have 22 buildings and 16,000 students at Hilliard.
Wow.
And John called me on the way home from I speak, and I did this R Factor 90-minute thing, and then I'm driving home, and John calls me up and says, I want to do it all. What's the journey look like? And I want to start a journey, and I don't want to stop. And so we started a journey with Hilliard City Schools.
Oh, good job, Hilliard.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that is wonderful.
And John's an exceptional leader, and lots of exceptional leaders in Hilliard in these buildings and teachers. And so that started the school movement. And now we're in 40 plus schools around the United States who've adopted this system. And again, our approach is we teach it to the administrators and some key teachers, then we certify people to be R-Factor facilitators. And the way we do it in schools is it's initially a 3-year start.
Okay.
Year 1, just the adults in the buildings.
Okay.
We don't go to the kids in year 1.
Just the adults, the teachers, the administrators,
and
as the
classified
adults.
staff.
Okay,
right?
got
Everyone,
it.
bus driver.
Because you want to start at the top. To explain the impact of why you would start at the top.
Because the adults have to lead and demonstrate what this looks like, and they need a year to work on that.
Okay, gotcha.
I think I've now concluded there are 2 great miracles in world history.
Okay.
Moses and parting of the Red Sea and people changing their behavior. I think those are the 2 great miracles
That's saying something.
in world history.
Yes.
And it's not unique to schools, but not every adult in a building is eager to behave better.
Correct.
That's true like I say, it's true in a company, it's true in a hospital, it's true any place.
So you start with the first year.
Is the adults.
Is the adults.
E
all
plus
the
R,
adults.
they all get R-Factor training.
Okay, and then what happens?
Then they take it to the kids in year 2.
And they take it. I mean, they teach it.
Yes.
They teach it. They
and we'll
apply
help.
it.
We'll support we'll do assemblies. We'll do come in, and it depends on the school and where it is and all that kind of stuff. But we certify, we equip the school to do their own R-Factor training. And I'll tell you what, educators are amazing. The innovative, unique ways we're seeing R-Factor being taught in elementary schools, like the Hilliard. There's a number of elementary schools at Hilliard that are just incredible with what they
because they take it and then put arms and legs around it and
age-specific, age-appropriate, creative ways of teaching E plus R equals O. And R-Factor has 6 R-Factor disciplines, so there's specific things you do to manage your response.
Correct.
And
which are tools to give them.
That's the
right?
how-to. Right? And so Kate Miller, for example, is the principal of Brown Elementary.
Okay.
In Hilliard. Unbelievable leader. Unbelievable vision. Unbelievable trust building with her staff, and then empowering them to go do this. The stuff that goes inside that elementary school to teach behavior skill to first all the teachers and then all the kids is incredible.
And we're talking kindergarten through
K through 5.
Well, you give kids these tools, and then they know what to do.
And just for everyone listening, kindergartners get this. They understand E plus R equals O. They understand no BCD. They get that. That's not a difficult concept.
And just to refer, what does BCD stand for again? Because it's a good concept.
Blame, complain, defend.
We're not doing that.
No.
And you say we're going to...
Instead of it, we resolve or we're resilient. We either solve the problem or navigate through it with a great attitude. And I'll say this. When I first taught E plus R equals O and the 6 disciplines to my kids, guess who they applied it to first?
You.
And it wasn't themselves. It was me. Hey, Dad, you're below the line. Hey, Dad, get your mind right. Hey, Dad, it's time to step up.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you
Hey, Dad, you need to build
kids.
some skill over there, Dad.
Well, I see why you have to start with the leaders. And I heard you say that before, where you're starting with the leaders first whenever we're doing that, because it's almost like a mirror, right? They're going to mirror you. So you have to get it right first if you're going to teach it.
Yep. And we all know that. Well, see, here's the thing about leadership, culture, behavior. The number one experience that people have of the culture of the organization is the behavior of the leaders. The number one experience. This is a really important point. We didn't talk a ton about culture in this conversation, but culture is powerful.
And we can do that after the break because we're coming into Let's go in after the break. But go ahead and finish your point.
This is really important. It is that culture is not built by documents. It's built by the behavior of people. Culture isn't a declared thing. Culture is a demonstrated thing. Culture is not an explanation. It's an experience. And enlightened leaders who understand how it works, they understand the power of their behavior. I'm going to say it again. The number one experience people have of the culture of the organization is the behavior of the leaders.
It's got to get that done right.
Got to get it right.
We got to get that done right as part of your process.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we return, let's continue this conversation because that'll be powerful for our listeners.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more business talk.
Well, welcome, and we want to welcome Tim Kight to our studio. Tim is the owner and founder of Focus 3, and we've had a wonderful conversation. Now, if you want to hear this show in its entirety, because you might have just popped in, you can always go to our website, takeactionbusinesscoaching.com, to listen to it in its entirety. And then if you do want to reach out and get on your Twitter account, what would be the best way? And that's what you would recommend, right?
Probably at Timothy Kight, Kight, or our website, focus3.com. In fact, Twitter's great, and I just encourage people to follow because we send this kind of stuff out. But the website is full of resources. And our podcast, the Focus 3 podcast.
So you can go there, you listen, you say, I want more, you can go there and get it.
Lots of information and all that you need to know.
And then right before the break, Tim, we were talking about the one thing we haven't covered is culture, because we've talked about behavior, we've talked about leadership, E+R=O, ABC. Tell us a little bit about the culture.
BCD?
I mean, what did I say?
ABC. Yes, BCD.
BCD, blame, complain, and defend.
Right.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about culture and how you get that impact when you go into an organization.
So culture is the belief system of an organization that produces behavior that produces an experience. And that's our definition, is what you believe, how you behave, and the experience that you give and receive from others. That's culture.
Wonderful.
And I think people have complexified this thing, and I think you need to keep it simple. What you believe, how you behave, and the experience you give and receive. And the thing about culture is that it's not something that's created by documents or declarations. It's created by behavior and experiences.
Right.
I mean, all of us have had the experience of being in a restaurant or flying on an airplane or going to a hotel or being served by some company where the culture was strong and the behavior was the kind that gave us a wow experience. You walk away going, now that, efficient, responsive, accurate, friendly. That's culture at work.
Right.
And culture's job is to drive the behavior necessary to win.
Okay.
Culture's job is to energize and drive the behavior called for by the strategy. And if you ask for behavior in your strategy that is not supported by your culture, you will struggle to execute.
And so how do you switch the culture?
Change it?
Yes. How do you, change it. Change it.
So that's where the triad of leadership, culture, behavior comes in.
Right.
The first thing that we help most of our clients with, if they don't have this, is the creation of a culture playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the playbook or the document doesn't build a culture, but you need a document. You need a statement of culture that's clear. Here's the mistake. The reason we do a culture playbook is the mistake a lot of companies make, and this is standard right now for some reason,
right,
is list a bunch of core values.
Right.
It's just a list of values,
right,
or guiding principles. And that's a start, but you need to go further. A great culture statement, what we call a culture playbook, has to have a statement of what we believe, a statement of behaviors.
Mm-hmm. How we treat each other kind of thing, behaviors, or how we act.
What we do, which includes how we treat each other, but what we do. So if you tell me that the core value of this company is integrity, great. Now, what do you want? Now, based on integrity, what do you want me to do? The culture statement must have a behavioral blueprint within it.
Right.
And if you don't tell me what to do, if you just say integrity, here's what the research shows. People are going to interpret and define integrity their own way.
It makes sense.
Yep. And then the behavior statement has to lead to a result statement or an outcome statement. We call that a BBO, belief, behavior, outcome. And that's a culture playbook. Then the culture playbook, once it's crafted, and it can't be long.
Right. Because people need to understand it.
It can't be long.
Okay, got it.
It's got to be clear, concise, and compelling. Those are the standards that we help people with in developing a culture playbook. Then leaders have to go communicate that thing with relentless consistency and exceptional clarity. They got to communicate that. Then they have to do it. The leaders themselves have to behave in a way that aligns with that culture playbook. Because real quick, and here's what happens. When people read a culture statement, the human heart says this: I wonder if the experiences that I'm going to have in this company align with what that culture statement says.
I was going to ask you that. What happens when you go in and you're changing a culture and some of the team say this isn't aligned? Do you see when you're going in and shifting, do you see people leaving because they don't believe in that?
Well, the first thing that happens is you create and then you communicate. The second thing that has to happen is you start doing, and then you start, you have to hold people accountable. Accountability is big.
Right.
However, notice I want to match these two together. Remember 20 square feet?
Right, the 20 square feet.
One of the messages in a culture initiative is you've got to communicate to everyone, we're all responsible for 20 square feet of the culture. Once your playbook has been communicated, everyone has to understand, everyone, each person owns, is responsible for, controls 20 square feet of the culture. And then you got to train people with the R factor.
Right.
For the behavioral discipline to own their 20 square feet. If we were to go down to downtown Columbus today and choose randomly 100 people off the street and ask them, and they all work for 100 different organizations, and ask them, who is responsible for building culture in the organization where you work? What would every single one of those 100 people say?
I guess they'd say my boss or the president, or
exactly.
They would say whoever is the owner.
And if that's the mindset, you'll never have an elite culture.
It's changing your mindset. And we're here today with Tim Kight talking a lot about how to get organization success through the Focus 3, which is the name of your company, leadership, behavior, and culture. We're diving into this culture. And I love what you just said. It's taking ownership at every level. Mm-hmm. And so do you see people pushing back when you're going into organizations? I mean, I'm assuming that happens in any organization. There's always, 1/3 of people are excited about what's happening, and 1/3 in the middle they're waiting to see, and then and I don't know if it's not 1/3, but then there's another third that they're cynical, they're pessimistic. I have empathy for the resistors and the cynics. Most people who've worked in most organizations have gone through so many initiatives that were never followed through on over time that they become cynical about the new program. Right.
It's program du jour.
Oh, what's the flavor of today? Let's see if this lasts.
What book or podcast or speaker did our CEO last listen to, and that's the new thing this year? I'm empathetic for that. I get that.
Right.
I get why the resistors push back.
Right.
Now,
right.
At the same time, we're really big on this at Focus 3 with our call. You have to outlast the resistors. This is the thing about exceptional leaders understand the power of culture, and therefore they communicate, like I mentioned, they communicate with exceptional clarity, and they implement with relentless consistency. And the message from a leader to everyone in the company is, this is the culture we're going to have, and we're going to relentlessly do this. We're going to go on a journey, and we're not going to stop.
Correct.
We're going to go do this. And say to the cynics, you know what? I kind of get the fact that you've pushed back in the past because we've swapped out a lot of programs and we've never stuck with anything for very long. We're going to stick with this. And if you're not sure, if you don't believe us, just watch. Just watch.
Yes, just watch.
Just watch. And then coach him and train him and coach him. And it's back to said, love him, listen to him, and then push him. I mean, you look at the culture statements that are out there. I mean, people don't come into a company in the morning and say, today I'm going to act without integrity today. I'm going to defraud. They don't say that. Today I'm going to be self-centered. Mm-hmm. I'm going to mismanage my emotions today on purpose. People don't say that.
Right. Right.
But they slide into it. They drift into it.
Well, you mentioned accountability being so key to making sure that drifting, I guess, doesn't happen.
Yeah. But accountability does not work if you don't have trust and clarity. We get called a lot. We have a leadership model called Lead Now, and there are 6 leadership disciplines in that model, which not time right here to get into it. One of them is accountability, but it's the 5th in our list. Accountability does not work if people don't trust you and you're not clear. I see it all the time where leaders try to hold people accountable, but they've not built the trust.
How do you tell them to build trust? Like, what are some of your tools for trust building?
There are, first, trust is a result of repeated experience over time of a person's behavior.
Correct. Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
I trust you now because I know what to expect.
Repeated experience over time. And there are 3 areas where they need to experience your behavior: character behavior, competence behavior, and connection behavior. We call that the triad of trust, the 3 dimensions of trust: character, competence, connection. Character is ethical trust, competence is technical trust, and connection is personal trust.
Yes.
And we teach that. That is a set of skills. That's a set of behavior skills. And all 3 are necessary. Strength in one of those will not compensate for weakness in another one.
The 3 C's: character, competence, and connection.
And connection.
And working through that purposely with your team.
With discipline.
with discipline.
And you yourself being honest about, I'm going to be imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect leader.
Right.
No one behaves perfectly all the time.
Right.
And being yourself humble enough to be held accountable, humble enough to say, you know what? Yeah, in yesterday's meeting, that wasn't best version of me. And that I'm sorry. I apologize for how I acted yesterday.
Taking ownership.
You have to own your own behavior. Own your own 20 square feet.
Mm-hmm. Own it.
Yeah.
And have them work through the 3 C's.
Correct.
I like that. And then that's how you get the trust, and then you build it.
Let me say this. It's not enough to have character and be competent. You have to connect.
Right.
Level of caring drives a level of connection. Level of connection drives a level of commitment. People today, I'll go back, people want to be listened to. They want to be cared for. They want to be valued. They just do. And that's and think about character, competence, connection. That's not a business triad. That's marriage. That's parenting. That's friendship. That's any person who wants to build a great relationship with another person. Character, competence, connection. It's the physics of trust every place in life.
Everywhere you go.
Yes.
And that's why this has done so well for you, from business to families, like you say, to schools, and to athletic programs.
Yep.
And your message is getting spread wherever. And then writing the book with Urban. Well, I don't know if you actually... Are you the author on Urban, or is it
No,
Urban?
there's another. There's another,
yeah.
Obviously, our stuff's in there, and I had a lot of input into it.
Yeah.
But there's a writer that helped
That's
us
what I
with
thought.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but those messages are all in his book, Above the Line, which you could order online.
Yep. Great book.
I've read it. It's wonderful. It's why you're here. We appreciate you spending the time. I know how
Absolutely.
busy you are, so I appreciate this, because our listeners get to have the benefit of this. So
Thanks,
I appreciate
Peg.
your time.
You bet.
And one more time, it's Tim Kight from Focus 3, and your website is
Focus3.com.
And your Twitter account is
At Timothy Kight, Kight.
Thank you.
You bet.
This has been Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed were those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given was not intended to replace that of your business advisor. For more information about the topics discussed today, call 614-306-7922. 614-306-7922. Tune in next week at this time for more Business Talk, your business, your success.